What is up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. This is going to be the first album to review for 2021 albums. As you see, I'm going to be reviewing the latest album from solo artist Steve Roach, entitled Into the Majestic. This is his latest album to be released on New Year's Day in 2021, being the follow-up to his last album released in 2020, which I actually did not listen to. And not that I didn't get a chance to review, but I didn't really think about Steve's discography throughout the time of 2020. Steve Roach, for those that don't know him, he has been one of the most, in my opinion, overlooked and underrated artists into making a huge, versatility-driven and a workaholic pack of music with the genres of instrumental, electronic, space ambient, and ambient music. I've always loved ambient music so much, and not only that, Brian Eno being my favourite ambient experimental style musician and the one that got me into the genre, made me approachable into discovering some faces into the kind of different environments and aspects of ambient music, and Steve Roach is one of my favourites. One of my favourite albums of all time is Structures from Silence from Steve's discography, which is one of my top 5 favourite ambient albums that I shall highly recommend, and you should check it out for yourselves. This album for me gave me a very simple and sweet starting point for 2021. This is quite a lengthy album, as Steve himself did release quite a lot of albums with lengthy runtimes of separate compositions. But what I love about Steve's music at the same time is that his music presents a different feeling of emotion and a journey to behold. And whereas with other musicians that involve some of the ambient tinges as well as the other subgenre additions like Aphex Twin or even carbon-based life forms, for example, Steve's music really deserves a lot of the attention, and I think that this new album definitely has given me a lot of the promise to start 2021 off so comfortably. There's only 2 tracks to the album, and let's jump right into this. The first track on the album, the title track, Into the Majestic, at almost 50 minutes, is a very slow but progressing feel of this piece of music. Starts on the slow fade in onto the sounds of high-pitched sounding bells, but then as the intro progresses, it's like that the piece of music was made in separate parts, and there's many more layers upon layers upon layers of various synthesizer sounds with different effects panning through both speakers, and there's some tinges of piano here and there, and there are some sections into this piece of music that's been very free and non-structured, separate loopings of synthesizer leads, that it reminds me of On the Run from Dark Side of the Moon, obviously by Pink Floyd, to another album like Terry Riley's A Rainbow in Curved Air, which that album's title track alone is a very repetitive, looping, but very impromptu, improvisational piece of music. That's how I personally do think about when I listen to this kind of music from this album. And it also made me think of Steve Reich's album Music for 18 Musicians, because that's a very repetitive album too, but the way that album was made, it was so cleverly executed with multiple pieces on different chord changes. I really enjoy these similarities that made me connect with this piece of music of Into the Majestic a lot. The only thing that is possibly the biggest gripe on this track, it does go on a bit too long, but from the sound and the whole audio and landscape side of things, it doesn't really take away the big amount of the feeling of enjoyability that I kept thinking about once coming back to this album. It's a very, very nice piece of music to start things very fresh. And I think for a piece of music like this that transcends into a different sort of environment, I think that this gave me lots of the optimism to really feel which piece of direction and era for music that 2021 is going to behold. The last track on the album, The Spiral Heart, is 25 almost minutes, pretty much on the similar vein, starts on the slow fades of separate chord sequences, and it does go into this pretty accurate nature of playing separate chords to present a different feel, and I do like this one a lot as well. It does make me think of one of my favorite bands of all time in terms of the synthesizer experimentalism, that is Tangerine Dream. And Tangerine Dream's music does make me feel very nostalgic, as that band was such a huge inspiration for this kind of environment. And I think with this mood of this sound of music, makes me think of some of their classic 70s outputs, maybe from Zate or Rubicon, or maybe one of the underrated great later 80s albums from Tangerine's discography. For me though, I don't think The Spiral Heart really stands as much of a great natural progression completely like the title track, but it doesn't take away the big feeling on absorbing this as well like the title track. It's just that the title track gave me more of the favourable and connected choice. The production on the album as well, to me, is very, very good. The entire thing is packed, drenched with reverb, but it doesn't sound way too over-polished or too clean. The reverb effect is really heavy on this album, and I think that this is really one of the great albums from Steve's discography that definitely needs to be heard. And I know this just came out, but give Steve a lot of the support. And also let me know what you think of this album down in the comments. Steve Roach's Into the Majestic, for me, is a very good album to start off 2021 with, a great moving point after the disaster of 2020. But I think that this album does provide something intriguing and as well as a motivational aspect. So that's personally all I would like to say on this album. I'm going to give this album an 8 out of 10. I know that's a pretty high rating for an album like this, but you know, since I liked it this much, I definitely give it a lot of credit and much praise to Steve for still continuing on to make such a glorifying, strong, wonderful collection of this kind of ambient music. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.